October 4, 2068 Oslo. Belcore Research Institute, owned by Sinotech Corporation. Laboratory of Anthropomorphic Robotics. Does he look creepy? Is he always like this? The important guest asked and waved his hand in front of the android's frozen eyes. This feeling arises because he is completely immobilized and does not imitate breathing, Anton answered the guest. New production standards do not allow us to make them look like people. Any citizen should understand that there is a car in front of him. Anton is paler than usual. He does not like surprises and anything that throws off the rhythm. For 8 long years, she and Hyades had been on their own in this quiet and cold corner of the world. But now an unexpected visit from the authorities could destroy their creative idol. Can we activate it? The checking expert did not let up, as if he did not notice their anxiety and discontent. It would be interesting to talk to him. I'm sorry, but it won't be possible until tomorrow, Hyades replied delicately. Its core will be reassembled for at least another 8 hours. Hyades is also unsettled. None of his reports in recent months could interest Sinotech. Just a test? This has never happened before. I don't have the strength to analyze this issue. The head has not left the dungeon for several months with the current problems of their project. Shelob was 93% ready. The 8th generation android, for as long as a year, could have been running as a detective at the local police station. Such a close and still unattainable height of artificial intelligence interaction with humans. Do you think this effect will interfere with his work? The guest almost kissed their offspring, ran his hands over his face and looked at every artificial pore. How will people communicate with him? Trying to calm his anxiety, Hyades looked at Anton, who was in no hurry to answer uncomfortable questions. Anton was silent and resembled a car with a faulty mimic module. He frowned, squinted, blinked and grimaced. And he poured his strange Asian herbal tea into himself, as if trying to kill the unpleasant taste or relieve the pain. Atypical. He will use various tactics and win you over when needed. He is capable of empathy and correct responses. In dynamics, everything is perceived more softly. Focus groups speak of him as inspiring confidence, Anton squeezed out. Oh, I read your report. Do you think he'll even be able to do that? Solve crimes? A disgusting smile appeared on the face of the checking expert, as if a moody and malicious child saw a beautiful toy and wanted to possess it, no matter what. A shark with its mouth open, ready to absorb years of their labor. There was nothing human about him. Hyades wanted to get this meeting over with as soon as possible. We are sure of it, Hyades assured. Neural networks have been doing most of his routine work for a long time. He will be able to do whatever it takes, and even better than humans. But is it still unfinished? Right? The guest's voice became more and more oppressive. That's right, Hyades replied dryly, but the guest was no longer listening to him and turned to Anton. Anton, as far as I understand, you are a kinesic mechanic, have you finished your part? Another strange variation of a smile lit up the guest's face. I'm a sculptor, Anton corrected with displeasure. And yes, my part is finished. I did an incredible job on Shelob. His movements, body language, expression of emotions and responses to them are perfect. Hyades sighed. Anton hated being called a mechanic. The checking expert did not know that the work on recreating human motor skills and facial expressions took more than 40 years. 4 decades to teach robots to walk and talk like humans, and only 20 to teach them how to keep up a conversation and perform the simplest tasks. Making an android move smoothly and speak almost like a human, while not causing discomfort to others, was more of an art task. We have no doubts about the safety and effectiveness of the implemented solutions. Jihad tried to distract the expert on himself. At the moment, Shelob 4 has perfectly mastered the 4th standard of dialectics and understands the concepts of our being and abstractions. He is able to make adequate and unsportsmanlike decisions based on the directives of universal logic. He knows the laws of machines and the entire catalog of categories and objects that Sinotech has at its disposal. The machine uses statistics and advanced analysis, official duties are fully programmed, all necessary functionality is implemented. So what's wrong with him? The nasty smile did not leave the guest's face. General AI problems are still unresolved, each firmware requires fine and long tuning, billions of training cycles. Shelob easily copes with template offenses, where everything is obvious, as in a textbook. But when it comes to atypical life dilemmas, sometimes he gets into existential dead ends, exhibits information deafness and catatonic stupor of AI. The best result of stable work so far is 98 hours. This is quite enough to conduct the first field tests without complicated cases. I'm more interested in how he will feel in long-distance races. At least 2 or 3 weeks. What do you say? This would be a great result, but it may still be years of work before it. 4 autonomous working days, then control of the system by the superior intelligence of the police station, personality adjustments, recharging and back to work. Better than humans. We expected full autonomy in the near future. In the near future, the expert stressed. There was an unpleasant silence in the laboratory. Hyades stifled a nervous laugh. He and Ant have put their lives into making the machine interact with people. But sometimes they themselves did not know how to do it correctly. Gentlemen, don't worry. The expert read them like a publicly available code. I'm not here to hurt you. Sinotech is not going to shut you down, and is aware of the attractiveness and potential of your project. I'm here more as an analyst. My task is to figure out what the problem is and help you finally release the product. I'm not going to get into your work. Maybe it will be enough just to turn your gaze to the right angle. By the way, my name is Joseph. I'm sorry for barging in like that. Unexpected visits are part of my job, the only way to understand the situation and see the true picture of what is happening in the institutions under our control. Well, see you tomorrow. The check ended as suddenly as it began. A moment later, the young expert flew out the door like a bullet, leaving behind only an unpleasant impression. Did you notice? There's something wrong with this guy. Anton looked out the window and saw off the uninvited guest while he got into a cab that jumped into the parking pocket. What are you talking about? Hyades was surprised, staring at an unusually gloomy and irritated colleague. I ran into him at the entrance, Anton said strangely. All this costume, perfect skin, a smile from ear to ear, fixed poses. I thought they brought us a new car with SIR. Have you ever had this? Have you ever mistaken a person for a car? It's a strange feeling. He greeted me, and I froze. I stared at it, analyzing it like a problem car. The micro moments of motor skills, you should have noticed too. It slows down and twitches. Well, you're an inventor. Hyades laughed. Always with your body language. I bet this guy works hard and is on psychostimulants, hence the impression. Don't be nervous, we're unlikely to be shut down. Everything will be fine. Understood. Anton answered distantly, packed up and left. It was generally typical of their environment to stay in their thoughts and not pay attention to anything. Well, Professor, am I here for a long time? Mills grumbled, burning himself with hot coffee. The only detective in Oslo was a very busy man. Or he put himself like that in society, trying to cover up his bad character. Hardly, Mills actually had a lot of work to do. Hyades didn't like using him, but they had no other candidate. So Shelob, let's go back to interrogation protocol number 27. Analysis, Jihad said to the car. Interrogation protocol number 27. Shelob's voice was practically devoid of intonation in the test mode. Nilsen Kayum, 16 years old. She claims that on 04/2063 she drank alcoholic beverages in the company of 4 suspects and was subjected to gang violence. There are no injuries characteristic of such cases, and the psychological profile after the incident does not correspond to the profile of the victim of violence. During the interrogation using a lie detector, brainwave algorithms characteristic of false testimony were recorded. No genetic traces of the suspects were found on the body of the alleged victim. The geodata of the suspects' chips match the crime scene, but their biometric indicators, at the time of the alleged crime, do not correspond to the characteristic physical activity. The psychological profiles of the alleged criminals do not match the profiles of the rapists. The lie detector test has been passed. The conclusion is that the alleged rape victim, Nilsen Kayum, is lying. Shelob, please describe the further algorithm of interaction with Nilsen. Analysis. False testimony was recorded, an offense was committed. The presence of the corpus delicti has been revealed. The possibility of committing an offense has been identified. The time and place of the offense have been identified. The evidence, the recording of the interrogation and the false testimony of Nilsen Kayum, has been collected and is located in the Oslo Police Department. It is necessary to initiate criminal proceedings against citizen Nilsen Kayum on the basis of Article number 424 of the Unified Criminal Code of the European Union. Due to the age of the suspect, it is necessary to inform her parents or guardians about the criminal proceedings. To study the personal file and characteristics of the suspect, to make a decision on the measure of restraint. Proceed with the investigation. Repeat the interrogation, identify the presence of intent, establish the motive and purpose of the offense, clarify the circumstances, and assess the psychological state of the suspect. After the investigation, transfer the information to the procedural service. Wait for further instructions. Open access to the personal file and characteristics of Nilsen Kayum. Why did Citizen Kayum do this? Analysis. Shelob jerked his head, fell silent, frowned, relaxed and stared at one point. Hyades sighed ruefully. Damn car. Mills swore. Hey! Dummy! Should we put the teenager away or not? What should we do? Come on, answer me. Sergeant Shelob. I'm talking to you. The Shelob did not respond or react to the shaking. His body almost instantly returned to the state of motor skills in an indistinguishably short time before the question arose, to which Shelob could not find an answer. Another dead end. I don't understand anything. The algorithm for analyzing actions, although simplified, is quite holistic. Especially for this case, I taught him the concepts of school bullying and its consequences for the psyche of a teenager. It's a backlash. And he shouldn't be falling like that. Damn it, what are we missing? Hyades glared at his offspring angrily. Mills fell behind the robot, shook his head in the direction of the scientist and laughed loudly. Well, smart guy, for example, the fact that this set of pieces of iron and wiring has never been a teenager with an unstable psyche. What are you trying to explain to him? You've read a lot of books in your lifetime. So what? Have they saved you from mistakes? Have you learned to understand the world from them? It doesn't work that way a little bit? Muttered Hyades. I don't care, I can't shift my responsibilities to this. It's one thing to accept documents from the department and issue fines for garbage. And here is life, everything happens, no matter how big your bases are, they don't have all the answers. You have to feel it. But this thing can't. But I'm not surprised either. Trying to control his nerves, Hyades went to the window and stared out at the perfectly smooth, polished landscape of concrete and greenery. For some reason, the machine can't think like you, detective. And this is strange, because his core has 1,000,000 times more experience than yours or any other guardian of law and order on this continent. I don't understand anything. More primitive systems have long been making incredible, creative engineering decisions that humans would never have thought of. Or they successfully provide psychological assistance to teenagers like this. Maybe it's you, Mr. Link? The detective smiled mockingly at him, waved his hand and walked out the door. Hyades sat down on the sofa and leaned his head back. What a nightmare. There are approximately 80 billion artificial neurons in the core of Shelob, connected by hundreds of thousands of billions of synaptic connections. Android knows everything that people know, knows how to distinguish one from another, understands the difference, knows how to reason, even knows how to think creatively, to some extent. 2 years ago they were already discussing Goethe's works for 8 hours on end, and Shelob figured everything out, was able to have a difficult discussion. I understood, at least at the level of logic and the chain of conclusions. But what's wrong with that? Some of the neural blocks in its core or their connections work incorrectly, information flows ring or rush to meet each other. Conflict. The brain of the Shelob gets into this area and can no longer get out of it, it gets lost there, like a person in a dark maze. Stable thinking systems and Glenn Kerr exit algorithms do not work. It is not clear why. Digital simulation and step-by-step diagnostics show that everything is fine and the system is functioning properly. It is physically impossible to find these bugs manually, it will take thousands of years. The connectome of his brain is too extensive. We need a different approach. His thoughts were interrupted by Anton, who for some reason returned to work in the late evening. What, nothing? He threw Hyades, rummaging in his desk, in the depths of the laboratory. No. It's a fiasco. I think we have a problem, Hyades sighed. Any ideas? No. And you? Anton went out to the sofa, walked past and froze in the aisle. You know, he began in an unaccustomed voice. Shelob is not alive. There is no spark in it. I don't know how to explain it. I only realized this recently, after I finished his motor skills. There is something missing in our creation, and without it, Shelob will not be able to exist. Anton? Jihad asked him after a pause. Do you want to leave the project? Do you think we're finished? I think you should get to the bottom of it. Shelob knows what a river is, knows its shape, composition, conditions, properties, knows what it can be used for, what role it can play and what can happen on it. But does Shelob understand why a person can look at the river for hours? Our brainchild lacks depth, and you and I will not be able to give it. Without waiting for an answer, Anton left the laboratory. Why are you so busy again? Jaina was confused, out of breath and almost late. I forgot about my parents? I forgot. Jihad muttered guiltily and automatically adjusted her scarf to the perfect position. Problems at work, don't worry. The reminder worked well. Jaina pulled him to her, straightened his clothes and hair, and hugged him. Do you know that you are the best man on earth? He replied. She looked deep into his eyes, stroked his cheek, and squeezed his hand tightly. I chose you because it's true. I will always be there for you and I will support you. Whatever problems fall on your shoulders, you will cope. I'll see to it. You're my man. I love you. Her words took all the tension from his muscles with a warm and fragrant stream of water, and he smiled. And I love you. Jaina replied. Their lips met, but she pulled away and hid her eyes. My parents. Don't expect too much from them. They grew up at a completely different time. They won't like you at first. Can you handle it? I can handle it. Is this really necessary? Hyades blurted out, immediately regretting his cowardice. It had been 6 months since he had been going to meet his girlfriend's parents, and for the unsociable scientist it was still a test. It's important to me. Her tone brooked no argument. Good, he breathed out and capitulated a little with joy. The cab seemed to be waiting for the end of their conversation. A surprisingly simple mechanism understood that when people are busy or talking, they need to be given time. An empty car braked sharply in front of them, put them in its spacious interior and drove away. It was a long road ahead. Jaina's parents could not be resettled in the city. Their insane desire to live on the land and engage in subsistence farming took over. They also did not accept an individual assistant who could significantly improve their quality of life. Jaina often thought about them and how they were coping there alone. Her bond with her parents had always been strong, as was their custom. Jaina shared everything with them, had no secrets, and always listened to their opinions. But that didn't stop her from growing up to be an independent and strong woman. They met by chance, and also thanks to science. They were introduced by the program responsible for the selection and compatibility of people. The young specialist became interested in how such neural networks work, and how accurately they have learned to feel our features. He registered his profile and tried to communicate with different people for several months. It wasn't fun or entertaining, and his scientific interest quickly evaporated. Hyades was faced with the inability to perceive the world of other people. There was a desire to delete the profile, but a cunning system did the incomprehensible and brought them together. They listened to different music, read different books, they had no mutual acquaintances, their areas of interest and their profiles, incomplete at the time, had no points of contact. Riddle. There was something special about Jaina that defied analysis. She also did not seek out acquaintances and conversation. She was brought to the service by a scientific study of linguistics and the features of modern slang and adverbs. Hyades exchanged a few words with her, and then he suddenly wanted to not end this conversation. Never. They discussed literature, science, people and society. Hyades was amazed by her knowledge and the depth of her gaze. She revealed to him an absolutely amazing thing. Every object and every word, different people imagine inside and understand subjectively. They draw a completely unique picture inside themselves. If you look at it from this angle, it becomes completely unclear how people were able to find a common language at all. Her work has become a major source of inspiration for Hyades. The boundaries in their exchange of information began to blur. Suddenly, she revealed her whole life to him, with all the dark and unpleasant details that are usually accepted to hide. And at no moment did Hyades feel any discomfort or disgust. He did the same in response. It was very strange to accept and get to know another person. And it's even stranger when another person sincerely wants to know and accept you. And then they started to relax together, though online. We watched old TV shows and movies, read poetry to each other, talked and argued for hours on end. We traveled together through virtual reality, investigated crimes and mysteries, went on raids, lived endless lives, killed monsters, saved planets and civilizations, defeated villains and became evil ourselves. Jaina turned out to be a skilled gambler and survivalist, even better than Master Hyades. This went on for 3 years. And suddenly, 8 months ago, the house system showed that a guest was waiting for him downstairs. Hyades was taken aback, froze on the threshold, but only for a minute. By some miracle, Jaina managed to change her job and move. She didn't ask, she was completely confident in her decision, nothing scared her and nothing could stop her. And he? Just accepted everything as it was. Something like a spark was added to his life. He could not find the words to describe this phenomenon in full. The endless energy with which he could create and move forward. He realized this concept in one short and imperceptible moment. A micro moment. But when he thought about how to tell her this, explain it, he realized that it was not possible. He would talk for hours on end and still not be able to explain what he felt. Jihad had no idea how to coexist with another person. He was never interested in relationships, communication, hanging out, sex or its simulation. Just science and work. Jaina was convinced that she should get married and try to have a child, but she was saving herself for a decent man. She showed great patience and taught Hyades everything he needs to know about what can only be between two people. No experience could match the depth that Jaina gave him. And it was amazing. It's just as amazing as when Hayat built a really powerful system for the first time and was able to immerse himself in the virtual entirely. The world then faded, turned out to be so gray that I did not want to return to it. And now he was Merc again, with Jaina by his side. But this time, it was completely real. At first, he was very worried that she would only distract him from his work. It scared the hell out of me. Jaina was very important, but he couldn't stop working. And she was so incredible that it wasn't necessary. Guided by her, Hyades became 1,000 times stronger. The cab dropped them off at a large house, far from the highway. The wind blew the crowns of the flimsy trees, carried their smell. There was no usual noise or the usual dull silence around. The sun was setting and plunging the surrounding space into an uncomfortable darkness. "Who do you work for, Hyades?" Jaina's father asked politely, picking at the green peas on his plate with a fork. The charge of the old batteries was not enough. The sunny days became short. The family dinner was held by candlelight, and turned into an even more surreal adventure for Jihad. Only here he did not have the right to make a mistake, the opportunity to download the save and change his choice to the right one. "I'm a programmer at Belcore. I'm working on cars, making them better," Jihad replied politely, trying to force himself to eat calmly in front of the audience. Something is not working out very well for you." A displeased look slid over Hayat's shoulders. "Well, Dad," Jaina pleaded from the opposite end of the table. "What am I saying? So a couple of months ago we tried to resolve the issue of indexing benefits, right by the car, in this important pension department of yours. Do you know how it talked to us? It's not very respectful. We went there 4 times and still." "Shut up, Aram. At least this young man has a job. He is in demand," his wife shouted at him sternly. "I'm sorry, Hyades." Aram smiled guiltily and lowered his eyes. "The light of my eyes, right. It's not your fault, it's personal. My father never imagined that cars would take all our work away from us. He taught me how to build houses, and I did it very well. Until the government decided otherwise. When my daughter went to school, I was no longer needed. And the allowance was not paid to everyone immediately. There was not enough money. There is also this war, unrest, terrorist attacks, antibiotic-resistant infections, crises. It wasn't the easiest time, and I still feel bad. It's good that you have a job nowadays. Jaina said you're busy on some very high project. Something that will change the world? Again? Yes, you could say that. We want to teach the car to do the job of the police, to the fullest." "Do you think we should trust machines to judge us?" Aram asked disapprovingly. Hyades fell silent. He wanted to hide under the table. Jaina cast worried glances at him and seemed ready to pull him out of this raid at any second. But this is not a game. She's counting on him. He has to cope. Only Allah can judge us. Jihad quietly squeezed out of himself, catching several wary glances at himself. "And you don't judge me. I read the Quran after I met your daughter." And he gave it to the machine to read so that it could draw conclusions. "No matter how much your culture has been condemned in the past, there are grains of goodness and rationality in it. I respect your views on the world." Panic appeared in the girl's eyes, but her father did not get angry. On the contrary, for the first time he looked at the guest with interest. Hyades swallowed the lump in his throat and continued. 10 years ago I visited the Paris ghetto. Life there is completely different from ours. Children are born without chips, medicine and a control system. They grow up and live the way we lived a century ago. And they die in the same place. Nothing can be done about it yet. The authorities are trying to restore order, walking a fine line between goodness and violence, but the police are not respected there. They spit at them, swear, even kill them. People who have taken on such a burden are changing. They become callous and deaf to other people's pain. They are looking for ways to do their job so that it does not burden them. They want to cope with what is happening around them. Every day. They get scarred for life. And soon they can't act correctly. I thought it would be great if I could get people out of this kind of work. None of us, no matter how heroic he is, deserve such trials. Machines will see everything clean, as it is. They will not have nightmares, they will not become violent themselves and will be able to make the right, fair decisions. And they will never get tired. In this regard, they are better than us. When there is no opportunity to commit crimes in the world, we will all be safe. I decided to devote myself to this. It looks like a decent jihad. And what happens when the car replaces you, Hyades? What happens when you are not needed? Don't worry, Aram. Hyades suppressed a laugh. Often the thoughts of uneducated inhabitants were completely insane. This moment will never come. We are already passing laws restricting the development of such technologies. We are not idiots. Machines are made to help us, not replace us. What is the point of improving them to such an extent that we will eventually be gone? Aram paused, thought about it and fell silent, picking at his food. Well, it's good if that's the case, he said, clearing his throat. There is a good side to all this. After all, I'm already carrying my third lung. The surgical machine didn't make a single mistake. And I also remember how there were no medicines in hospitals, and doctors could make a mistake. It seems so wild now. The subsequent dinner brought significantly less psychological damage. Conversations shifted towards hobbies, and Jihad was able to show off his knowledge and love for the world of already rare things and literature. After another hour, Mom took Jaina upstairs for their confidential gatherings, and Jihad had to keep a good impression alone. Do you smoke, Hyades? Aram asked, pulling him out onto the porch. No, I've never smoked, Hyades answered honestly. Then stay with me. Aram took a drag on his cigarette and exhaled smoke. My father wouldn't have a white man in the house. Haram. That's what they told him. We have lived in our culture for a very long time. But I'm not like that. I see the way you look at her. And I can see that you're serious. You know, little by little, I'm starting to respect you. Thank you, Aram. This is important to me, Hyades was embarrassed. I love my wife very much and I will die for her. But Jaina is the center of my universe. She's everything to me and I'll fade away without her. You must never offend my daughter, or by the Almighty, terrible things will happen. May He forgive me for all these words. Did you hear me, Hyades? For the first time in a long time, Hyades saw notes of aggression and similar feelings in a person, but it was not scary, rather interesting. I heard you? The words came cautiously from his lips, but Jaina's father was already smiling. Welcome to the family. Aram slapped Hyades on the shoulder. Don't embarrass Jaina and us. What you said about our faith and the Quran. Is it true? If I hadn't met your daughter, I wouldn't have changed my attitude to all this, Hyades replied sincerely. Do you believe in God? Aram looked strangely into his eyes. I do not know. Science provides answers to many questions, and these answers are very different from any religion. But science has not given an answer to the question of where all this came from, what happened before the Big Bang and what lies beyond, which we will not be able to translate into equations. The version of chance and origin from nothing seems silly to me. And so I do something similar to a human myself, don't take it as an insult. And I'm trying to teach this creature to be kind and humane, to live and act correctly. And surprisingly, religion and the prophets have tried to do the same to us. I'm really looking for answers in your writing. Truly, God will always find a way into a suffering heart. Aram finally relented. Hyades also relaxed and tried to calmly inhale the acrid smoke. Aram finished his cigarette and looked into the depths of the forest. Hyades, I know this is a bad time from all sides. But I want to have grandchildren. Before I'm gone, I want to feel all that noise in the house again. Don't answer, you heard me? You will live a long time. Ahem. I have excellent corporate insurance, for all family members. Jihad began to speak, but could not develop this topic. His gaze rested on the swarming mass of trees and his body shuddered. How did people live in such conditions before, without cities and life support systems? The subconscious was already looking for a threat in every swaying branch. I wanted to go back to the house. That's how it works. The unconscious. The detective went outside and spat on the ground. A habit acquired while working in England, which he sometimes did not control. Like a shadow, the young protege followed him, and his face expressed suffering. It was usually the protege who was responsible for this hateful part of their job. I'll call you myself. Mills grumbled and shooed the junior sergeant away. The desired number was displayed on the police interface of his lens. The system heard their conversation and knew what to do next. A dial tone sounded in his ears. Mr. Link? The detective tried to make his voice as official as possible. He hated such calls. Yes, I'm already going. Am I late for a meeting with you? I completely forgot. I'm sorry, I'll be in the lab soon. I was late yesterday on personal business. Hyades' confused voice was accompanied by the clatter of dishes. Mr. Link? Yes. I want you to come to Anton's house right now. Jihad suddenly felt the unusual tone of the detective, fell silent and thought. But why? I have a job, let's meet there, he muttered, confused. Mr. Link, Anton died last night, the detective said as clearly as possible and with pauses. How did he die? What are you talking about? Mills felt something snap inside his interlocutor. Hyades did not expect such news. The most difficult moment was over. The detective paused and continued in his usual business-like tone. He committed suicide. Please arrive at his house immediately. You know the address. Yes. Yes, I'll be right there. Hyde's typical and inhibited reaction removed a lot of questions for him. 20 minutes later, the young professor was there. He looked disheveled, sleepy and scared. I almost fell out of the cab, tripped over a high curb and tore down one of the warning holographs of the cordon. Displeased with his behavior, the police drone burst into a stream of beeps and clicks. How did this even happen? Hyades muttered in a crumpled voice. The detective looked him over carefully, forced him to lower his eyes under his gaze and, without going into details, reported. He took out his chip, connected it to some kind of homemade system, simulated standard indicators. It's not the first time I've done this. Then he consumed alcohol and mixed it with drugs. I'm not ready to answer exactly which ones, but I know for sure that there were illegal ones among them. His heart stopped at 4 a.m. Overdose. We found out about it a couple of hours ago. It's suicide. Why would he do that? Hyades breathed very fast and sank to the ground. His psychological profile was fine. Only now the station has discovered inconsistencies in him. He knew how to cheat the system. I'm not surprised, considering what you've been doing. It looks like a prolonged depression. You can't joke with that. He hasn't talked to anyone for several months, and I understand he hasn't talked to you either. But that's not the reason you're here. Hyde Link was disturbing, like all people who have faced this in their lives. The patterns of behavior that Mills studied at the academy could not convey what was happening to a person at such a moment. The detective could not get used to this part of his duties. Too strong emotions and uncontrolled feedback. It's much more comfortable dealing with corpses. Come into the house, I want you to see everything for yourself. Don't worry, the body isn't there. He's already been taken away. The transparent door obligingly swung open in front of them. Jihad hasn't been to Anton's for almost a year. Nothing had changed, everything was in its place. Anton always loved order. All the cups are in place, the guitar is on the counter, the ancient vinyl alphabetically. The automatic cleaners have not left their duties. Even if Anton had not used all these items at all lately, there was no dust and debris in the house. We're going to the basement. How are you? The detective was watching Hyades closely and was ready to act if he fainted. It's bad, Hyades answered honestly. But Hyades got even worse after they climbed the stairs. They were alone downstairs. At least, from living people. Hyades shuddered. A small child's body, wrapped in a pink tutu, gracefully stamped on the spot, learning a ballet step and making mistakes. Only the removed faceplate and the exposed carbon fiber skull gave away the android in this creation. And all this against the background of a dozen naked mannequins of cars standing and lying around. A dollhouse. Do you recognize it? Mills asked quietly. Yes, I'll find out, a lost voice answered him. This is his sister. She died in the attack on Simferopol, right? Hyades sat down on the steps, stared at the floor, and began to breathe quickly again. Help me understand, Hyades. I have always believed that taking such projects home is unethical, unprofessional, and even illegal under your organization's code. That's right, Hyades whispered breathlessly. Did you notice any oddities behind him? Were you aware of this work? No, not at all. Calm down, please. You are involved in a police investigation. Now we'll see what kind of business he was doing before everything happened. And you will tell me exactly what it is. Or we can do it tomorrow when you feel better. No, let's go and see. Yesterday he wasn't like that, I don't understand. As soon as it came to working with the house system, Jihad pulled himself together and dismissed the detective. Hyad brought all the camera recordings tracking the movements of the owner to the holograph of the room. Anton was sitting right on the floor, surrounded by old physical screens. He watched the dance of an android similar to his sister and made adjustments that were completely invisible even to the eye of Hyades. It's still not right, came from Anton's lips and the car froze. The cycle was repeated over and over again, as the minutes passed, and Anton took his head off the code less and less. He began to take a sip of the bottle, fiddled with a strange pipe, smoked it, washed down pills with alcohol, then retired to the bathroom for almost an hour and returned, barely standing on his feet. I can't remember you, Ida. He said in a strange voice. Hyades was trembling, helping himself with his fingers and eyes. He literally gutted the holographic interface of the house hanging in the air in front of them. Ida is 18 years old. Ida is graduating from Cosmtech. Ida is at her wedding. Versions of older cars flashed in front of them. What does this mean? The detective decided to interrupt Jihad before he watched the video to the end. I think he was making his sister what she could be, Hyades said hastily, turned away, ran away, and vomited into the sink. Why? I don't know. Hyades couldn't hold back his tears. How did I not notice that? He was weird. We're all weird in this area. The detective stammered, looking at the pale Hyades. I want to ask you to sort out his notes and explain to me what happened. But if it's too much, give up. You don't have to. I have to. I have to. Just let me come to my senses. Let's go outside, the detective said. Just in case, Mills motioned for an assistant to bring a medical unit from the car and stay close while Hyade tries to recover and break out of the whirlpool of thoughts that overwhelmed him. Are you sure you didn't know anything about this? The detective tried to distract Hyades with questions. Yes, I'm sure. He was never just a sculptor. To tell the truth, he helped me with most of the work. He was always interested in their intelligence. He has a wonderful brain. Why did he do it? Why didn't you share it with me? There's probably no mystery here, Hyades. I couldn't accept my sister's death. Something happened recently and it was the last straw. It's not his fault. If he had trusted the security system, he would have been saved. But he didn't want that. I deliberately excluded such a possibility. It hurts and scares you, but you have to respect his choice. Anton had the right to dispose of his life that way. It doesn't matter that he ignored the legal procedure for such cases. Jaina was crying. Scary. She had never felt so powerless and unable to protect her man from this world. It was as if she was vomiting from the inside. She was bursting at the seams, and Hyades, seeing these tears and a look, wanted to gather himself. But he couldn't. Anton had no parents or friends. He forbade informing his social circle and distant relatives about the incident. His note contained only dry instructions and no answers. For the first time in his life, Jihad went to a funeral. He mistook the man at the entrance to the farewell center for a car. He was too kind and sympathetic, at the same time unnatural and fake. How can you do this? To see these faces every day? Listen to this. To let it go through you. Everything went terribly and crumpled. When Jihad was asked, he could not say anything about Anton, as if he had lost control of his speech center. Couldn't accept the request, couldn't process it, couldn't respond. Information deafness. Jaina clung to his arm and wanted to drag him through it all as soon as possible. It was good that she was there. Only 20 minutes for the whole process. A few words from an employee of the center, a couple of leading questions and an offer to pay for additional services. Jihad decided to pay everything from his account. He could not do otherwise and feel powerless. Besides him and Jaina, several colleagues came to the ceremony. The box with Anton's body disappeared into the depths of the furnace, and everything he was ceased to exist. Hyades asked that there be no ashes left. He would not be able to take the urn in his hands. It was necessary to organize a wake, but Hyades could not bring himself to read about all these rituals. I couldn't even watch the tutorial video. If Anton had given him time to prepare, he could have gone through it hundreds of times in the virtual world. Be prepared. Keep your dignity, keep it right. Jaina told him that Anton didn't seem to like the guests, and there was no need to worry about that. Jihad must complete their work and make Anton's name mean something. To be remembered. This is the best way to honor him. Through tears, Hyades agreed. He had never felt so bad and hard before. His beloved did not leave his side all that day, but, creaking with her heart, she left him the next morning. Her man needed to be alone with himself, to digest all this. How she understood and felt all these micro-moments, Hyades did not know. I accepted it as it is. It would be possible to get drunk, close up at home, order food for a week and run away to the virtual. But there was only one way out of the maze of thoughts. Work. Hyades was looking at a huge white sheet of paper and a red hieroglyph written on it. Until recent events, it was the strangest thing Anton had done in all the time they had known each other. 2 years ago he returned from an extended vacation in Japan, even more withdrawn than usual. He put the canvas right in the middle of the laboratory and spent hours diligently tracing the mysterious symbol with a thick brush. He couldn't do it, he threw away the damaged paper and started over. It took a week, and the resulting work of art took up space on one of the walls, and eventually became an invisible part of their workspace in the laboratory. An element of the interior. But not for Anton. Jihad now recalled that his colleague sometimes froze in front of the wall and stared at the painting for a long time. He answered questions vaguely and reluctantly. Kami, a symbol originally from Shintoism. A certain particle of God, a divine spark that exists in every object or being in the universe. In search of inspiration, Anton visited temples in Japan, studied culture and communicated with people. He mentioned once that Japan had influenced him a lot, and that he had experienced something there that he could not describe in words. It's just a piece of paper covered in ink. And a strange idea. To seek the unknowable in the known. There is no soul in the human body and consciousness, only a code that they have practically uncovered. There are no secrets. If only we could put all this into the big picture, in a modest biocomputer designed for us by nature. Anton mentioned Ida only once. Jihad asked him who was in the photo on one of the desktops. Anton replied dryly, "Sister." Anton had already finished his studies and worked for Sinotech. His parents had suffered a stroke, they were too far from the city. Ida was with her teacher at a gymnastics competition at the center. The air defense in that area failed to shoot down a fragment of a separable warhead. Everyone within a kilometer radius was killed. This event was practically not covered in the media. He found out everything after his parents called. Despite the information blockade in Paris, the mood was felt and Jihad remembered these terrible months well. It is good that the United States did not dare to use really powerful weapons near the borders of Europe. Jihad went to work, called his parents every day and tried not to give in to the general panic. Anton had never talked to him about this topic. He did not mention the Arctic crisis, Russia or America, their relations, the new Cold War and the Third World War, as if these 15 years of confrontation had never happened. As I remembered now, he would abruptly leave the classrooms or the cafeteria as soon as someone started to have a discussion on this topic. It's scary to lose a loved one like that. Not being able to see him and talk to him. Leave the equation without a solution. Jihad's parents left voluntarily. There was no tragedy, all matters were settled, a whole year of celebration, a warm farewell. Did it have an effect too? Anyway, his brain chemistry should have been fine. He didn't eat street food and received all the necessary elements and supplements for a stable psyche. Such a condition could not appear spontaneously, it took a long time to develop. His first notes smacked of enthusiasm, relentless thirst for work, were simple and understandable. But the further Hyades looked, the darker it became. His work and life were one and the same, overlapping each other. Hyades tried to let the endless stream of his notes flow through him. And understand? It all started with their first dead end, 5 years ago. Their debut car could only be used to disperse demonstrations. How they joked back then. She was so creepy and ridiculous. Problems with logic, dangerous instability, ignoring directives, unnatural poses and facial expressions, mistakes in conversations. One day, the machine unexpectedly failed the basic test. It could not distinguish a living person from a hologram. Then they stopped working on the project for 3 months and thought that nothing would work out. And at the same time, oddities and phrases about Ida began to appear in the recordings. The simple and understandable language of the diaries changed, became heavier, more voluminous, filled with philosophical reflections, memories and cryptic sketches. But Hyades did not notice the changes. Then he was depressed himself. One gloomy and cold morning they gathered again. They threw out all the available code taken from other machines, the results of deep learning over 3 years, and started all over again, from scratch. In parallel with Shalab 2, Anton began to assemble Aida. Maybe, before making an android, he wanted to first create something similar to the living person he knew. So that it turns out well. Or, in this way, solve an internal conflict, let go of a situation that prevented you from working. But everything went completely the wrong way. Isaac, gain access and activate the machine that is on the table. Hyades exhaled, rubbed his eyes, and stared at the android's small body, which had begun to move. The girl skillfully assumed a sitting position, moved to the edge of the metal table and dangled her legs. Status, Hyades commanded, but there was no response. Diagnostics. Ida did not know the service teams and lived her life, with the interest and energy of a child, looking at the audience. Her head was spinning more and more often. She began to dangle her legs and suddenly turned sharply to Hyades. When are we going to have ice cream? Hyades shuddered at her concentrated gaze and childish voice. Isaac, turn off the machine, sa, he blurted out. I don't want to sleep, said Ida, returned to a lying position and froze. Hyades' hands were shaking, and it had been a long time since he had been afraid of cars. When did Anton manage to achieve such a realistic body language and speech? This is wrong. Jaina said she definitely needed to say goodbye and then let go. I'm sorry about your friend. The analyst's voice changed a little, but still did not express any natural emotions. Thank you, Hyades replied stingily, ignoring him. A high-level access key gave Mr. Joseph the right to visit the Sinotech property at any time. The analyst didn't touch him for almost a week, which was a very smart decision, but still he came to finish what he started. You're doing everything right, Joseph said almost warmly. Immerse yourself in your work. And it's not the corporate rat talking in me right now. I know exactly how you feel. Not everyone can see the result of our efforts. But we must not stop. Are you ready to show me what you have? Yes, you can talk to him. But I won't be present, with your permission. The mood is not right, I can't look at these endless attempts. I'm going to get some coffee. I'll answer your questions later. Of course, Heidi's. Go ahead, Joseph smiled, rubbing his hands. Downstairs, Giada was already waiting for a cup of coffee, without sugar substitute and slightly warm. Isaac, who surpassed the artificial intelligence of the university, perfectly heard their entire conversation and knew exactly the right recipe for the drink. So they did not ask for a culinary printer and a beverage machine in the laboratory. But the lens did not scold Hyades for not fulfilling the daily norm of 10,000 steps. Joseph behaved differently today. His movements and facial expressions became smoother and more relaxed, as if he no longer felt any inner discomfort. Apparently, at the first meeting, his superiors held him by the throat because of some important issue. And now it's not. He's still a strange man, no wonder Anton mistook him for a car. It's as if it's not his worries and work that torment him, but the debugging process is underway. Well? What do you think? Hyades asked nervously when he returned. The analyst was sitting next to the android, staring at one point and carefully examining it. It's amazing. I've never seen cars like this before, he muttered. He's stuck on the question of who he sees himself as in the future. It's even funny, because most of the young people of this generation also fall into a stupor from such questions. Just like half a century ago. Joseph straightened up, came unusually close to Hyades and continued with a share of admiration. Hyad, I really respect the work you have done. I'll give you another month, then I'll see the result. If he doesn't suit me, I will significantly expand the team. But don't worry, their names won't make it into the credits. But this is an extreme measure, I think you can handle it. You are incredible. After these words, something inside Hyades snapped. Shelob was his life's work, an object of love and hate, an important piece of the puzzle. And at the same time, this project became so disgusting to him that he was ready to erase it from his life. My thoughts froze somewhere between these two pictures and did not move at all. Stupor. And what do you think, Hyades, would a person be able to exist in such a body? The analyst's voice pulled him to the surface. What are you talking about? Well, if, for example, you put a person's consciousness in a car, will a person be able to live like this? Or will he go crazy? Hyades mused. I don't even know. Theoretically, this is possible. You can make an interface inside the machine that completely simulates the physiological processes and chemistry inside the body and specifically the brain. But even then it won't be a human anymore. It's very difficult to calculate. It's too early to talk about this, we use mind maps and network analysis, but these are only parts of the essence of a person, his exaggerated way of thinking, experience, concepts. A kind of map is a map with paths indicated on it, a block diagram. But not a personality. Maybe in 50 or 100 years it will be possible, with other technologies for building a neural core. But why? You scientists often ask such childish questions. Immortality. Think about it, you are a great man, pushing our species from extinction to prosperity. You have spent your whole life on one android, which will become obsolete in 5 years, and other people will improve it. Such a small contribution. But what if you had 1,000 years? 2,000 years? Thousands of years of experience and knowledge. What would you do with this world then? I do not know, I have never thought about it, Hyades surprised himself. We live in an amazing time, we are still mortal, but we have already begun to forget about it. With your insurance, Hyades, you'll live another 80 years if nothing happens. You won't even live to meet another species, you won't know if there was a god, you won't know if our universe has an edge and if there are other universes. Aren't you interested? I don't know. Never mind, my friend, in 40 years you will be very interested. When you realize that everything that is around you ends. And unsurprisingly, your fate is in your own hands. There is a spark in you in order for this world to change, you don't need to ask for more. Okay, I have to get on the train, see you later. Joseph shot out the door again, leaving Hayat in a strange and lost state. Spark. Isaac, turn off the conversational dictionary and answer the questions. After about 20 minutes, Hyades decided to fill his head with something else. Done, a deep voice replied. Isaac, define the concept of school bullying. Analysis. School bullying, bullying. Negative impact on a member of the school staff by other members of the team, psychological pressure, aggression, physical impact. The reason for the occurrence of this phenomenon? Analysis. A system failure in the work of the team. It arises against the background of erroneous methods of self-organization and learning. Individuals are in search of their place in the hierarchy of the collective. This process is influenced by fragments of human code called complex automatic secondary instincts, which originate from the directive of self-preservation. The subconscious aspect of behavior forces individuals to use aggression against more vulnerable members of the collective in order to determine them to a less significant place in the hierarchy, to take a more advantageous position for survival. This process is difficult to manage. It is not possible to amend the source code. In case of observation of this phenomenon, correction of the collective or its individual members is required. How can this phenomenon affect the object, the victim? The object of school bullying may have negative physiological and psychological reactions. To specify? No. Disable conclusions based on statistical analysis. Question. Can the object of school bullying commit crimes against the background of mental disorders? Analysis. Under these conditions, the emergence of an internal conflict and the search for its solution in this way is likely. An ethical question. Is the object of harassment to blame for committing illegal actions or aggression, if he has psychological injuries acquired during the harassment? Analysis. Yes. Unexpectedly, the AI did not give the usual detailed answer. Why Isaac? An individual must comply with the directives. Isaac struggled to find the words. To ensure the safety of the life of each member of the team. The life of each individual is unique and cannot be repeated. Protection from dangerous individuals is required. Everything is clear with you, Isaac. Hyades waved his hand at him. Tell me, are there other AI available in our network besides you? Who else would I talk to? Found, 68 AI. Able. Department of Medical Diagnostic Systems, ABI. Department of Optical Satellite Systems, AIDA. No data available. Bernal, Department. Wait, what? Let's go? Hyades froze. Let's go. There is no data available, Isaac calmly repeated. Who is the developer? There is no data available. List the AI in the order they were added to the server by date, in descending order. Let's go. IDA, version from 12/30/2067. Let's go childhood. The total data of the network analysis for the entire period. More me. Stop, who installed the AI data? Koveshnikov Anton, administrator writes from 04/01/2065. Isaac, load the latest AI into your memory and run it in safe mode. Done. Is anyone there? Hyades asked nervously. The answer was silence. More than me. His legs carried him out of the laboratory and dragged him away. This has not happened inside him yet, and he has not encountered such violations in working with AI. Thoughts about Shelob and what Anton was doing alternated in his voice in the most chaotic way. Hyades couldn't focus on one thing, and he couldn't think about two problems of this level at once either. I wanted to call Jaina. She would have found the right words for him. Or at least calmed him down, brought him back to a cycle of unsportsmanlike and painless reflections. No. You can't load her with all this further, that's not what her bright head was created for. Unexpectedly, Hyades found himself in an old park. As it happened in his youth, immersed in his thoughts, he could walk for kilometers without realizing at all what he was doing. Not the best place for a decent citizen, according to the city map. Orange threat level, the lens warned him. Hey you? Long. A strange, metallic voice called out to him. Hyades turned around and, to his displeasure, ran into Scamp, a man who believes that the whole world around him is a garbage dump. His garbage dump. The tramp's voice was so unpleasant and strange because of an artisanal voice implant that replaced part of his jaw and trachea. Maybe it's cancer or a flesh-eating bacterium that this trash just didn't want to treat. Looking for what? The unpleasant person asked, smiling at him with a crooked mouth. Looking for? Jihad was surprised by the question and the fact that he did not behave as in the virtual world and did not throw a sharp no. Yes, I have it. The tramp pulled a dark, smooth bottle from under the folds of his clothes. The best Sam in town. Sam? Said Hyades, surprised. Moonshine. You can't buy it anywhere else. This is not fucking heroin, you redneck. I call it the lot of the aristocrats, Scamp replied with sparkling eyes. Hyades stared at the bottle and the tramp. One of the AI's methods of breaking the deadlock is random action and observing the consequences. How much? Hyades asked. I don't bargain for loans and euros, the tramp snorted. Your lens and shoes. It's coming, Hyades said, as the hero of one of his virtual adventures. Before leaving his eye socket, the lens tried to scare him with fines for illegal transactions and drinking alcohol without a license. The tramp's military boots turned out to be very uncomfortable, even after tightening to the right size, and the landscape, without augmented reality and decorating filters, was depressing and faded. Hyades was in no hurry. He had not rested his eyes for a long time and had not been on the embankment. A sip of sea air and a sip of this Sam. The drink turned out to be strange and unpleasant to the taste, but better than a similar experimental swill in the virtual. Giving away the lens was a strange idea. Why would Scamp want her? Such chips and spare parts can be easily found in the trash. Some change lenses once a day. He will not get access to information and financial transactions either. Only an archive of photos and videos for several days. Jaina is not there, just him. Well, even if this guy is a pervert, it doesn't matter anyway. There was something about this cold and snow-dusted quiet seashore. The mechanical movement of the waves, their complex refractions, gave a strange rhythmic but somehow soothing sound. I wanted to stay here, listen and breathe. 15 minutes later, the first buffs fell on Hyades. The clouding of consciousness and motor disorders were much more serious and prolonged than in the most hardcore and illegal fashion of the hero of the wastelands. Hyades staggered back. Alcohol did not give any positive effects for a person. Just a huge list of negative ones. But for some reason people don't give up on it, they see something. And everyone understands that. But there is no word or description for it. The general romanticism of alcoholics? It took him another 2 hours to get to work, and he couldn't resist taking a couple more sips along the way. Just don't let Jaina lose him until he gets to the lab and gets a spare lens. Seeing a loved one offline is still a challenge. The building was almost empty, few people liked to work in the evenings. The hated Shelob sat like an idol in his place and mocked Hyades with his whole appearance. The damn golem. Shelob, aren't you tired of sitting? Check the lab for evidence and download interrogation protocol number 27 to the last stable point. Shelob started moving, got up smoothly and walked around the laboratory, speaking out the difficult case and his conclusions for the 1000th time. Shelob, is it right to initiate a criminal case against citizen Nilsan Qayyum? Analysis. This time, the Shelob managed to take a few steps before it froze. When one of his legs froze in the air, Hyades muttered familiar curses under his breath. Analysis. A voice without intonation echoed through the empty laboratory. The block of the neural network responsible for the occurrence of an existential impasse can be found on the basis of combining a cognitive and motor test. The body language in the last moment before the impasse corresponds to the blocks of motor skills and meshes with numbers. Anton? Hyades whispered. Anton Koveshnikov. The voice replied without intonation. Sculptor of robotic structures and organisms. The task? The task? Hyades asked, trying to cope with his fear. An ominous silence answered him. The light in the laboratory suddenly dimmed and went out. Attention. The engineering system of the Institute announced in an anxious voice. Dangerous heating of the main AI core has been detected. Power limit. Stop current calculations immediately. In case of activation of protective systems or damage to the property of Sinotech, you will be held accountable. Now, Hyades muttered, wiping sweat from his forehead. Anton. Tea or coffee? Tea. A voice answered without emotion after about 10 seconds. Isaac, stop the execution of the current program. Analysis. What was that? The artificial intelligence did not respond. As if wandering through a maze, Hyades began to pace the laboratory until he hit one of the walls. The red lines looked at him from the rough white surface of the canvas. It was as if they were trying to tell him something. The voice inside him fell silent, the flow of thoughts was interrupted, and his gaze slid over the texture of the paper and the curves of the symbol. So several hours passed and finally he understood. It's been a long time since you called me. Is there any progress? Mills seemed glad to see Jihad again and to know that he was okay. It looks like it. Talk to Shelob, tell me yourself. I'll prepare everything now, Hyades answered him, digging into the code. Hyad, have you heard about the corporate summit yet? The detective was cheerful and atypically inclined to talk. No, I'm not interested, Hyades tried to concentrate. But in vain. Your supervisor turned out to be Zach Metzer. Excuse me? Hyades was surprised and stared at the inspector. Zach Metzer, founder and head of Sinotech. I'll throw you a recording while you're digging, it's a shame not to be aware of such events. A translucent figure appeared in the corner of Hyades' eye. Analyst Yosef stood on the podium, surrounded by floodlights and thousands of severely and richly dressed people sat in front of him. Now Hyades noticed that this man, indeed, behaved unnaturally, but spoke with inspiration and unprecedented energy. A spark that Hyades also felt inside himself. I am a human being and my words mean nothing. I'm just shaking the air. I've come the same way as you. I have earned my fortune and money. My family and I will not need anything for centuries to come. You know me. I am Zach Metzer and I am 98 years old, the permanent head of Sinotech, Auris and the holder of 40% of SIAC. I am not dead, I am alive and full of strength. The chosen ones are already aware of all these incredible wonders of medicine. And many of you are already trying them. Yes, I got my second chance and now it is not clear how long I will live. I have time and energy again. But I'm not happy. There will be nothing left after me. My stupid family wanted to tear up my empire even before I was dying. It was as if I did not exist, and I did not make all these monstrous efforts, did not go through this terrible and full of hardships path. And what will remain after you? What kind of world have you brought your children into? What kind of world will your children bring their descendants to? Cutting through the waves on your expensive yachts and throwing cocaine at your new livers, have you thought about it? Dissatisfied comments poured out of the audience, to which the speaker did not pay any attention. I'll tell you, I saw everything with my own eyes. Those people, at the expense of whom you have what you have nothing. We are building a colony on Mars, but people are still dying of thirst and hunger a step away from you. Not everyone can afford expensive medicines and survive on benefits because of the unemployment that you have created. And it's not just people who have problems. You didn't know that we've already killed half of our younger brothers. There are almost no fish left in the rivers and oceans. There is no clean water, the air we breathe is getting worse, and no amount of our efforts will be able to change it. And I remember a time when the world was completely different. When he was big, and there was a lot in him. I didn't think then that it didn't have an edge. That time has passed. The day will come when there will be nothing left. And those of you who are richer will live to see this moment and see it with your own eyes, as I see it now. There will also be no place for you there. After 1,000 years, there will be no visible traces of what you tried to build. No one will remember you. There will be nothing left. Behind Zach's back, terrible footage of environmental and man-made disasters of the last century began to crawl. Some of the audience defiantly stood up and left the hall. I'm just a human being and I'm shaking the air. But I'm here to start a new era. No one but me wants to or can do it. You've bought the government, you've got it under you, and you're doing what you want. As you think. But you are just as powerless ants and this auspicious season will soon end. You can't beat death, you can't hush up water riots in France or Africa, and there's nothing you can do when the world collapses. The rejuvenated head of Sinotech burned through the first rows of the audience with his gaze. I, Zach Metzer, am rebooting the concept of business. Money doesn't matter anymore. My entire empire will now work to make the world a better place, or at least not burn down in the fire that we all lit and maintained. All employees of Sinotech, Auris and its subsidiaries, all their relatives and close friends, will receive a lifetime allowance in the amount necessary for survival, full lifetime medical insurance and a guarantee of full protection from all types of threats and crimes from the Auris Security Service. I will take care of all my people, because I am not better than them, not higher. Because I'm in the same boat with them. We are one big family and we will strive to survive. I will use all my personal fortune and all the free resources of the empire. I will promote this topic on every corner. I will capture the consciousness of every inhabitant of the earth and convey to him the truth of my view. You already hate me, but you will have no choice but to follow me. Addressing Messrs. Sapkowski and Barrett, you can kill me, but I made sure that this train would not stop even after my death. You may not take me seriously, but in a couple of hours you will see how Alpha Beta and GM will sign the first pact between megacorporations. These are the best moments. He blew everyone away there. The detective interjected and smiled at Hyde's lost appearance. Are we ready, Mr. Link? Perhaps. An unexpected twist. Zach is a very brave man. I'll think about it later, Hyades muttered, and the detective turned to the android and sat down on the edge of the table. Hey dummy. The suspect attacked the girl and tried to commit a sexual offense against her. A professional boxer was passing by and intervened in the situation, stopped the suspect's attack on the girl. After the suspect's attack stopped, he tried to escape. The boxer attacked the suspect and inflicted severe injuries on him. The boxer claims that he was carrying out a civil arrest. What should I do with a boxer? Analysis. Shit, whispered Shulob. His facial expressions displayed an extreme degree of disgust for a second and immediately corrected. Remove unnecessary evidence against the boxer, help with the line of defense. On behalf of the police department, recommend to the judge to impose a suspended sentence and community service in the amount of 600 hours or more, send the boxer to anger management courses, force him to take a social interaction exam for 3 years. What was that just now? Mills's eyes widened. It was you, Detective, Hyades explained cryptically, not looking away from the code. And? Would you like to clarify? The detective loomed over him. So far, I call it the Kveshnikov AI scheme. When we created the first maps of consciousness and intelligence based on them, we threw away a lot like garbage. We simplified the concepts and the connections between them, averaged them, based on the information of many people. But it won't work that way. Anton was incredibly able to feel this loss even at the level of human movements. The smile that Shelob should smile at in certain situations is not the smile I smile at Jaina at all. Anton spent years trying to find this elusive difference, feel it and breathe this spark into his secret project, into Aida. He wanted to make her alive again. But I couldn't. He killed himself because, as a sculptor, he was insignificant in front of life or even God, if we really are his creations. If only he could see correctly what he had done. Jihad fell silent, clenched his hands and swallowed a lump in his throat. The detective looked at him skeptically, but surprised. Anton has redesigned the algorithm for creating a map of consciousness. It records as much information as possible about who we are and how we feel. Our every sigh of relief, our every terrible dream, small moments of happiness and the unbearable pain of loss. Billions of new connections between concepts that are completely incompatible from the point of view of the machine. Why cats are better than dogs, why rain can be pleasant and why sad, why you're scared that you can't protect everyone, and why you try to work better to avoid it. That's what makes us us. Micro moments of a unique and deeply personal experience. Did you give the car my soul? Were you able to put my consciousness into it? The detective whispered. No, it's not achievable yet. Only your essence, its elusive and quick moment. When Shelob cannot find a way out of the impasse, he will find this essence for a second. Like a man who is only momentarily awakened from a dream and asked a question. I haven't quite figured out how it works in terms of code and simulation yet. And it loads computing power terribly if it works all the time. Shelob calmly imitated breathing, blinked, made random gestures and cast calm and trusting glances at them. The detective rubbed the back of his head and walked around him a bit. Holy shit. Hyades managed to surprise this rude and unpleasant man to such an extent that he was unrecognizable. And you can make sure that he doesn't swear. I've been fighting this habit myself for many years. You can? I used your old maps, took something from Anton and from myself. When can I work with him? The detective rubbed his hands together. Soon enough, Hyades replied confidently. And one more thing. I'm not the best candidate. I have problems with willpower and empathy. It doesn't matter, I know who to take these qualities from. Hyades smiled, caressing Jaina's holography on his desk with his eyes. You need to find a better person. Try your best. In the meantime, I hope Shelob learns how to crush my cockroaches, with whom I live every day. The detective wanted to say something else, but froze. His gaze caught on a red symbol rising like a spider from the white surface of a once blank canvas.